So the way that we're trying to unify data and creativity, I think, has changed a lot over the course of the time that I've been in the programmatic pharma space. And I think what's the most important approach now is to be thinking of those cohesively and collectively instead of in silos. I think we've seen that starting with data first, making sure you understand the audience is key to driving the best performance. So if you want to be able to do that and have creativity behind it, I think it's important to sort of weave that creative framework into what you're trying to do from a targeting and measurement perspective, instead of thinking it as three separate components of a media plan, building everything into that framework from start to finish.
So, Francis, how are dynamic creative and adaptive design helping you deliver more personalized, meaningful patient experiences?
It's helping a lot. I think authenticity is such an important part in what we see in pharma, and authenticity can mean a wide range of things. One of the things that I'm actually really passionate about in the space is I think there are a lot of underserved communities that are impacted by conditions in different ways from others, and the way that marketing has been served to those communities, the way that creatives look, the way that they kind of see the representations of patients has not always been that same sort of proportion to how the impact is driven. So that's one case where I think representation from an authenticity perspective, having various versions of creative that speak to actual patients within their journey is impactful. On top of that, I think having creatives that speak to every facet of the patient journey. So whether it's the early onset, whether it's someone that's discovering more about their condition, thinking about switching to a new medication, it's important that there's something that resonates with every aspect of that journey. It's impossible to kind of get every little checkpoint, but having multiple creatives and more dynamic decisioning behind that really makes it go a lot further.
So, for instance, that focus on authenticity and on creativity really speaks to the kind of human-centric idea of storytelling. But also, like every other marketing category, healthcare is also seeing a lot more automation in the creation and delivery of advertising. So, how do you balance that human element with the role of machines?
Yeah, I just go back to authenticity, right? And I think human oversight is so important, especially in a category that's as regulated and sort of at the whim of compliance guidelines as pharma. So where I think automation and AI is really powerful is the speed to getting things in market. So whether that's creating different versions of a creative, or kind of being able to vet various partners and see what the offerings are, and kind of being able to put that into a more actionable strategic plan. That's all extremely important. And I see a hopefully very near future where all of the sort of privacy approvals that we have to go through that take months and months and every pharma marketer sort of hates having to deal with, speeding that up is going to be so impactful to what we can bring to market. We can't do that without a level of human oversight and sort of final approval to make sure that it fits, in what compliance guidelines are, what the advertisers are actually trying to accomplish. So really exciting, but just kind of needs that balance.
So, Francis, I'm often drawn back to thinking of the old days when media impression eyeballs were enough proof that an advertiser needed to know that their campaigns were working. These days, we're all about outcomes. This is the kind of performance era we're in. How do you measure the impact of creative, from that standpoint, and not just as a media delivery standpoint?
Yeah, I'm a really firm believer of long-term thinking in media and kind of setting yourself up for success from the very beginning. So upfronts are right around the corner, for example, which means that 2027 planning is going to be here before we know it. And while that is always kind of scary and seems to be quicker every year, we have to make sure that we are thinking about measurement, how we're going to define success, how we're going to define that at various different stages of the funnel, especially as things become more and more programmatic and you're pulling more and more channels into the biddable space. So it's understanding how you're going to measure success, building creative performance into that, and having a more sort of holistic measurement framework in terms of all different KPIs we're looking at. Like some of those front end metrics still matter a little bit. You still want to make sure you're delivering. You want to make sure your costs are where they need to be, but making sure that you're driving actual business results on top of that too.
Where are you seeing the most progress being made in bringing creativity and performance together in healthcare?
Yeah. I've been in the pharma programmatic space for the better part of a decade, and I always used to say that our clients are they're so innovative, but it's difficult to get something from idea to execution in the pharma space because of all the guardrails, all the privacy concerns, and I think because of that, pharma was always viewed as a little bit behind the curve of the other verticals. It's still not quite as easy, and there's still more limitations in pharma as there are for other verticals, but we're seeing that gap close a lot. One of the things I'm really excited about is the advancements we're seeing in the, quote unquote, emerging channel space. So CTV, audio, we're seeing a lot of creative assets, I would say in CTV specifically, whether you want to talk about an interactive unit, pause ads, things that are driving a little bit more interactivity to the patients, and layering on the data signals that we have, especially at Omnicom, where we have our very valuable Axiom spine. It's driving a lot of performance that's more measurable, quicker to kind of getting those outcomes and quicker to market. And again, more innovative and creative within the space, so kind of marrying all that together.